Okay, we already went through privatization. Independent regulatory commissions. As we get into how the bureaucracy is organized, part two. Independent regulatory commissions, their definition is that they are responsible for some sector of the economy. They are making and enforcing rules designed to protect the public interest. They also judge disputes over these rules. So in that way, they have almost an executive, legislative, and judicial function because they carry out rules, they make rules, and then they judge people or find people who have broken the rules. The people who head up independent regulatory commissions are generally called boards or commissioners. Each agency is governed by a small commission. The commission gets their job because the president has put them there. They have a fixed term of office. They are confirmed by the Senate. So even if, like, Janet Yellen was picked by President Obama, and she will continue to serve on the Federal Reserve Board as the Federal Reserve Chairman past Obama's presidency, so into the Trump presidency. So she doesn't have to worry about being political, which is good because if she's enforcing rules to protect the public interest, she shouldn't be driven by politics, partisan politics. She should be making decisions that are in the best interest of the United States citizens. Critics are they're too connected with the agencies that they regulate or the companies that they regulate. So, for example, the Federal Communications Commission is an example of a regulatory commission. They regulate television and radio. Some people would criticize the FCC for being too lenient on media and allowing media to get away with too much and not fining them for things that they put on the air that's inappropriate. Or that the Security and Exchange Commission allows for banks and stock traders to get away with too much because they're too close to each other, too cozy with each other. All right, so what is regulation? So I just told you there's independent regulatory commissions, but what do they do? A definition of regulation is the use of government authority to control or change some practice in the private sector. So like the USDA regulates meat plants or packing plants by having everything inspected by people who work for the USDA to make sure that all of this meat and all of our food is kept and processed in a sanitary and healthy manner. So the importance of regulation is that it's going to protect the public good, and really every single thing in our life is subject to some kind of form of regulation. Everything from the clothes that you wear to the car that you drive, the fact that there's seat belts in your car, all of that is subject to national transportation regulations. So again, a good example is that the U.S. Department of Agriculture is charged with regulating the quality of meat products. You see an increase in regulation through the course of our history. In 1887, like before 1887, there wasn't a lot of regulation, and if you did have regulation, it was handled at the state level or at the town level, local level, city level. There was a Supreme Court case, Munn versus Illinois, which upheld the right of government to regulate companies under the Commerce Clause. So Congress, using their power under Commerce Clause, could regulate industries that they felt were exploiting workers or exploiting consumers. Shortly after that, the ICC, or the Interstate Commerce Commission, was charged with regulating the railroad and the railroad prices and the services that the railroad provided farmers. So regulatory commissions now started to set rules that industries had to follow, develop guidelines that industries had to follow, and then once those rules are in place, they have to enforce the rules, wait for people to complain, send inspectors out to businesses, and then require businesses to issue or have licenses to operate. So this is an OSHA poster. A lot of y'all who work are familiar with that OSHA poster. OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Administration, are responsible for regulating workplace safety. If you're having a problem in your workplace or you think there's unsafe stuff going on, then you call OSHA. They send out an inspector, and that is that. They can decide whether or not your place of business is in violation of federal regulations. You do have a lot of politicians who push deregulation. Generally, they're going to be Republicans. Definition of deregulation is reducing government oversight of an industry to allow an industry to operate more freely. People who support or proponents of deregulation would say that too much regulation raises prices, which costs businesses too much money to operate. It hurts America's competitiveness when we're trading abroad because our companies are having to make products more expensive because they have to comply with all of these US government regulations, whereas Chinese companies do not. So the products that are made in the US are more costly. Regulation does not always work well. People in the regulatory agencies, the bureaucrats that work for those agencies, could be corrupt or could use too much administrative discretion when they are regulating. Critics of deregulation said, great, deregulate. Now companies are going to do whatever they want to the environment. That's awesome. What's going to keep a company from polluting? What's going to keep a company from exploiting their workers? What's going to keep a company from making unsafe products? The companies aren't going to tell the people, hey, look, this product might kill your 3-year-old, but just want to let you know that it might kill your 3-year-old if you give it to your 3-year-old. So maybe wait till your kid's 8 years old before you give them this toy. Companies aren't going to do that. Companies are going to be like, buyer beware. Does it look like your 3-year-old's going to choke on that? They're not, will companies necessarily do what's right, or are they going to do what makes money? That's what critics of deregulation would say. And so critics would point to like enormous expensive bailouts that the government has given companies or industries that have been deregulated. Like when we deregulated the savings and loans business, businesses or banking, financial industry, and we've had to bail them out numerous times. First, not numerous times, but in the 1980s, and then again with the Great Recession in 2007 when we allowed banks too much leniency. All right, that's it, guys.